I have called the UDR7 the gateway drug of the Ubiquiti world. And the reason is quite simple. It could quite possibly be the best device for you to choose if you're just looking to sort of test the waters and try it out a little bit. And in fact, in my last video when I reviewed the product, many of you in the comments said that's exactly what you did. This was the device you chose to sort of get your taste. So, in light of that, I thought we would do a full setup video of the UDR7. We're going to get this device online, we're going to create some VLANs, I'm going to show you some stuff with the Wi-Fi and the switch ports, and then we're going to set up our firewall rules in the new zone-based firewall system. In addition to that, we're going to turn on some of the advanced security features like IPS, and if you stick around to the very end of the video, I'm even going to show you how you can expand your Wi-Fi coverage without running any wires. So, let's get started. If by chance you're building a home right now and having a great network is important to you, I encourage you to head on over to ethernetblueprint.com and check out a couple products I've made. The first one is a PDF that basically walks you through the exact process I go through anytime I consult with somebody to help design the cabling in their home. We're going to be talking about how to build a great network head-in, how to connect any internet provider, cable drop locations, as well as future-proofing. If reading a PDF isn't your jam, there's also going to be a video course version coming out later this month, May of 2025, and it's not only going to cover all that, but it's also going to give a whole bunch of bonus content. So if that seems like something you may be interested in, I encourage you to finish watching this video and then check it out when you're done. All right, so here's our UDR7 that we're going to be setting up today. The white light indicates that it's fully powered on and ready to be set up. However, I don't have an internet cable plugged into this guy yet. Matter of fact, the little screen right here is telling us to plug something in. So there's a couple things you're going to need to set one of these up for the first time. One, you're going to need a cable with an active internet connection, okay? And that can be coming directly from your modem. It could be coming from another router. It doesn't really matter, but you will need to have a cable with active internet to plug into this, okay? The second thing I would recommend is having a Ubiquiti account. The Ubiquiti ecosystem is really nice because it allows you to manage it from anywhere. So you could simply download the Unifi app, which I also recommend, or you can get on a computer anywhere that has internet connectivity and get in and manage your network remotely. But that's only done if you set it up and turn on Allow Remote Access, which uses the Unifi Cloud for that. So it requires a login to Ubiquiti for that. So if you don't have an account with Ubiquiti, maybe you found one of these online or your buddy sold it to you, I would recommend to go do that, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and get this thing online. So I'm going to use the Unifi app to do this. I think that's a really easy way of setting it up. You just need to make sure you have the Unifi app installed and that you're logged in and that you have Bluetooth turned on your phone. But like I mentioned earlier, you can use a laptop for this. But I want to keep this video rolling because I think it's going to be long enough the way it is. So the first thing we need to do is get this thing plugged in. On the screen right now it says plug in a cable. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Let me flip it around here. Okay. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to plug into port 4. There we go. Okay, now it says ready for setup. So we're going to go ahead and open up the Unifi app. Now it should pop up on its own. If for some reason it doesn't, you can hit the little plus button here at the top right of the screen, and you can see there's a Dream Router 7, tap to set up. So because I've set this up and rebooted it and reset it multiple times, I'm sure it was having trouble popping up on its own. All right, so there's the first screen. We're just going to leave it named Dream Router 7. It's asking us what we want our Wi-Fi set up. So if you already know what you want your Wi-Fi setup to be, you can enter that here. For the meantime, I'm just going to leave it set as Unifi, and we can go in and change this later, and we will. I think that's an easy way to do it. All right, so I'll go ahead and hit connect. Now for the next couple minutes, it's going to show you some cool screens on the app and show you, some things you can do inside Unifi. The clock, the ticking clock at the bottom is pretty close to accurate. Usually it takes around 2 minutes. Now it can take longer because if it does detect that your device needs an update, a lot of times during this setup, it'll automatically download the latest stable update or version of the OS and install it. So yours could take a little longer. Now I've had mine set up. It has all its updates. So it should just take the 2 minutes here. So we're going to go ahead and let it do its thing. All right, so when it completes, you'll get this screen. We're just going to go ahead and say go to dashboard. So we'll do that. And it should take us to the main page of the Dream Router 7, so it is ready for configuration, which is what we'll do next. Now that we're connected, we're going to go ahead and get into the setup of this thing. Now for the remainder of the setup, just so you guys are aware, I am doing this from a computer, right? The app is great. You can do a lot of the stuff we're talking about here, but it's a lot of going into screens, backing out of screens. It's much easier to do on the computer. Second thing I'm going to tell you is my computer is actually connected to my home Wi-Fi. I'm not connected to the Dream Router 7. So in essence, I'm kind of configuring this remotely. If you are configuring this by connecting to the device, either by the Wi-Fi or the physical ports on the back, and then you make configuration changes, there could be times when you kind of get kicked off the network briefly while it's doing its thing. So because I'm recording this and I want the thing to just kind of keep going, I am connected to my home Wi-Fi. That's why when I get into the devices screen or the client screen, you're not going to see any clients. I'm not connected to it. Now, to get to this menu, it's very, very simple. You just go to unifi.ui.com and log in with your Ubiquiti credentials. And then once the page comes up, you'll just choose your device and you'll be brought right into the dashboard here, okay? Now, a couple just general cleanup items. Just in case someone's watching this a year down the road. Currently for this video, at least at the start of it here, I believe we're going to have to do an update, but we are running Unifi OS 4.2.12 for the control plane, for the controller software, okay? And then our network application, which is running on our controller, is running version 9.0.114. Now, I believe we're going to have an update here, and I'm going to make that part of this process. And I'll show you some of the differences that you get with an update. They actually did change some things in the menu, even what they called stuff, from one update to the next, which makes it really hard for guys like me to do relevant content forever because Ubiquiti keeps changing things. I'm a huge advocate for it. I'm not complaining Ubiquiti. It just, sometimes people stumble onto an old video and it doesn't look the same. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right, brief tour. Let's work our way down. So we got our dashboard here. This is a topology. So as we connect devices, this kind of gives you a little map of how they're all connected. Really kind of a cool little deal. And then you can actually turn on show internet traffic, and it'll actually show you using, motion and graphics, show you where your internet's going, which devices are using the most internet and everything. It's kind of cool, but because we don't have anything connected to it, we're not really going to see anything here. And you can also turn it sideways if you like the side view versus the up and down view. So they've really done a good job with this. I think it's really cool, and you can even tweak the preferences a little bit more if you'd like. The next is our Unifi devices. Now, like I mentioned, we only have one device, the Dream Router 7. We are going to add a device later, and I'm going to show you what that is all about. But right now, the only device that we have in our network is this one-stop shop, the Dream Router 7. The next menu is our clients. As I mentioned, I'm not even connected to this thing, so 0 clients. But once you connect devices to your Wi-Fi, you'll see them pop in here, okay? Next is our port. So there's a port manager on this. This is a really great feature. They basically give you the ability to quickly get into the programming area of your switch, and it's called Port Manager. So you can see up here we're looking at all ports. If I had a switch connected to this, I could switch between my Dream Router 7 and my switch and configure those ports, or I can look at all of them at the same time, and you get to see like which ports are configured, which ones, where your VLANs are, like it'll show you that. So right now all of our VLANs are just set to port 1 or VLAN 1, right? These are both set to WAN ports. We're going to get into that. So really quick, cool little area here. Then we get into this radio manager. So as you start getting your Wi-Fi online, this will help you kind of hone things in. Is your density good? Do you have other wireless networks out there interfering with yours? You can look at the environment. You can run speed tests. You can do all sorts of things in here. You can see mine's blasting all around mine, right? You can see what radios you're using. It really is a nice little tool here to kind of hone in and program your Wi-Fi. Next, we have Insights. Insights is a great little area too. Kind of just shows you your traffic. There's a couple viewers. You can see your flows. Basically, it's going to show you anything that's blocked in the firewall and stuff like that, so we can do that. And then there's some geo-locating here, so you can actually see where your traffic is talking to all over the world. It'll start lighting up this map, and it'll tell you, hey, you have a computer talking to Istanbul over here, and you can block it right from this map, which is actually really, really neat. Then down here, we have our system log. You've seen we'll get into settings here next. we're going to spend a lot of time in settings. But the very bottom icon is the system log, and we can go in here, we can see logs about the devices, who's logged into our unit, updates, clients. This triggers is things being blocked in the firewall. All that is right in here. It's actually telling you what's going on using logs. And then we have our settings. All right, so when we go into settings, it brings up a new menu. We have Wi-Fi networks, our internet settings, VPN, security, routing, profiles, system, control plane, and admin and users, okay? So to start things off, I want to just show you where to update your device. Where would you go to get the latest update? Make sure your unit is up to date. Like I mentioned, I believe we have an update to install. So I'm going to do that in the control plane. I can also get to the control plane by clicking here, and you can see our OS settings. It used to be this is how you always went to it. Now it's saying, hey, we've moved, but you can still get to it with this button. So I think when I do that, that little icon will disappear. Let's see. Yep, and it goes away. So now you get to it by going to settings and control plane. So real quick, just the control plane, I want to kind of oversimplify this a little bit here, but the control plane, or how we really called it, is your controller. There is a built-in controller on this device that's built in to your Unifi gateway that allows you to configure all these settings in one place, right? And then once you hit save or go, it sends those configuration changes out to the rest of the network. It's one of the things that really makes Ubiquiti shine, because that's a really advanced feature. Most enterprise level networks have network controllers or Wi-Fi controllers that manage the network for you. Well, Ubiquiti brings that to the home. In the old days, you had your router, maybe you had a couple access points, and you'd have to log into each one individually and set them up. With a controller or a control plane, you can actually just make the configuration changes once, add a VLAN, create a Wi-Fi network, turn on firewall settings, whatever it is, and when you hit go, it will tell all the relevant devices on your network to take those changes. And so it's a single point of configuration for your system. The other big thing that it does is it's always talking to your devices, always listening, always optimizing. So it's a really nice way to kind of have this central point that's kind of just balancing things out in your network to make sure it runs well. And that's that's another really nice feature of having a control plane or controller. All right, so I went into the control plane. You're going to see in settings, once you go into a menu, you're going to get lots of sub-menus. So it will take you a little bit to kind of learn where everything is. So I can't give you the whole tour, but we're going to focus on a couple key areas. The first thing I want to talk about is updates. So we went to control plane. You can see I have integrations, backups, storage, so we can see, and as you can see, it says a card failure, probably because I pulled the tray out earlier, but we can fix that. These are settings to our console, so I can rename my device right here, and then we have our notifications. I can't quite get into notifications on this video. We're not going to have enough time for it, but for right now, we'll just leave the default ones on, which seem to do pretty good, okay? All right, so let's go back over here to updates. I'm going to click where it says UDR7, and this menu is going to pull up. So there, like I said, the hardware OS that's built into this is running 4.2.12, okay? This is the official release, but if I click the drop down here, you can change your settings so you can get early adoptions, early access, or release candidates. So you can get early access to other software versions, other OS versions, so you can kind of be one of our testers. If you're just starting out, I'd recommend just leaving it on the official release. That's a good way to go. As you fall in love with Ubiquiti, which you will, this is the gateway drug, remember, you might get a little bit more brave with this. Also, you notice we have auto update turned on. Now, I'll probably get ripped on the internet in the comments for saying this, but I think when you're just starting out, guys, it's okay to leave your stuff set to auto update. Just let it do its thing. Matter of fact, if I let this be checked, and you can see we have an update right here, it would update on its own to the latest version, which is great. And it'll do it 3 in the morning while we're sleeping and stuff like that. However, the network admins of the world out there will tell you that you leave yourself open to the system breaking. You could wake up to issues. However, in general, with small home networks, chances are they're not going to break things too bad. But I will just throw the little warning out there, by leaving auto updates on, you could leave yourself open to that. So basically, it'll still search for updates if you don't check auto update, but you might have to manually go in and click to update after you've read about them and you hear they're stable and it's not going to cause any issues. And you can read all those release notes just by clicking this box right here. So if I go into there, it's going to take you to the community and it's going to tell you, hey, this is what we updated. This is people comment in there. You can read about it. So if you like to do a little light reading like that, you're welcome to do it. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and click here to update. So it's part of this video. I'll fast forward through all the stuff and then we'll get back into kind of talking about it. So we just click on it. I could read the release notes right here if I wanted to, but I'm just going to go ahead and say proceed, and it's going to go ahead and queue it and run the update. Now, what we are actually updating here is the network application. You notice we didn't get kicked out of the router. The router still exists. I can still get in the control plane, but I lost access to all my Wi-Fi settings, all my network settings. That's all being done in the network application. That's where you go to set up your firewall settings. So because that is updating to the latest, greatest version, I don't have access to it. Once it's done, it'll start the service again, and then we'll have access. But I didn't get kicked out of the UDR7. I could still come in and kind of click around in here, at least in the controller side of things. Now, while it's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and kind of talk to you about these others. So there's multiple applications that you can run with the UDR7. We talked about that. One of the things I love about it is it's powerful enough to run all of the applications. So you have Unifi Protect, which is cameras, Access, which is like swiping into a door using card readers and stuff. There's Unifi Talk, which is voice over IP, Unifi Connect, and Interspace. And I haven't really used some of these very much. I kind of stick to the network and protect because I think generally for most home users, that's what you're going to be using. Although I do know some users out there that have voice over IP and Access running. I hope to be able to get into that, but right now I haven't. So if I wanted to install cameras on this network, which we're not going to do for today's video, all I would have to do is click install. It's going to go ahead and install Unifi Protect, which is a completely different application on this router, and I'll be able to switch between network and cameras, right? And be able to add cameras to this. So it's as simple as that. Once it's up there, it'll just say running or up to date or whatever. It'll tell you what version it's on, and you'll be good to go. You'll also notice that right here, it's kind of giving you a little summary. We are updating the network application. It's giving us a status, what version we're on. We are doing the official release channel, and we have auto updates turned on. So it's going to give you all that stuff in this little box, even without that other window popped up. So I'm going to go ahead and let this finish installing, and then we'll get back to the video and continue. All right, so you can see that was actually pretty quick. So you can see we are up to date. We are running 9.1.120. You can also see Unifi Protect is installing. We're going to just go ahead and let that run in the background. We don't care. But when it's done, you'll see a little icon up here next to network, and you'll have network and protect, network and protect. You can just flip back and forth between the two, just like tabs on an internet browser. It's really actually pretty sweet. Okay, so now that we're ready to go, we're going to go ahead and get to creating some VLANs. All right, so now we are back on the dashboard here, and we're going to go ahead and create a couple VLANs, and I'll throw a slide up here just to kind of give you a taste of what we're going to install or what we're going to set up today as part of our video, okay? So to set up our VLANs, the first thing we need to do is go into settings here, and we're going to choose networks, okay? Now we want to create our VLANs before we create our Wi-Fi networks because we want to assign our different Wi-Fi networks to different networks. So it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing, right? So we want to create our networks first, and then we'll go create our Wi-Fi networks, and then we can choose the IoT Wi-Fi is connected to the IoT network, okay? So that's what we're going to do. So the first thing we're going to do is click on networks. We're going to choose new virtual network. Now, the one thing I will tell you here is by default, you get a default network. We're going to leave the default network in our setup today, okay? The default network is just going to be a 192.168.1.0 network, and we're going to create that home network, IoT, and a guest network, but we are going to leave it here, okay? I can't delete it, but a lot of times and in other videos, we've abandoned it, not used it. In today's video, we're going to go ahead and use it. We're going to keep things very, very simple, and this is just going to be, think of it as the VLAN that our equipment connects to. If we added a switch, I would put it on the default network. If I added an access point, I would want it to get an IP address from the default network, okay? And matter of fact, when we do the other one, you'll see that kind of in place when we extend our Wi-Fi coverage a little later, okay? Hint, hint. All right, so we're going to go ahead and say new virtual network. This network is going to be called home network, okay? And we can put spaces in here. This is just the name of the network. Our router is going to be the Dream Router 7, so you don't have to change that. And I'm going to uncheck this network, or uncheck this. I guess you don't really have to, but a lot of times I do. So we're going to uncheck that, and we're going to just leave this as 192.168.2.1 for our IP scheme. And then I'm going to choose manual here, and we want this to be 2. All right, so the VLAN ID is basically how we tag this VLAN. We basically say any traffic gets tagged with the number 2, and that's how you know it's in VLAN 2. And a lot of times we want this to match up. So notice it's a 192.168.2.1, okay? That third octet there with the 2 in it is what we want to match with our VLAN ID. So if it was 3.1, we'd want to call that VLAN 3. We're going to create a guest network, and for some crazy reason, I always do 99.1 for my guest network, so that's going to be VLAN 99. So let's go ahead and do that. Now these settings down here, we're not going to take a deep dive into them. We'll keep things very, very simple, but there's a couple things I want to highlight here, okay? When we create our guest network, this will come into play. We'll actually call it a guest network, but our home network here is not going to be that. We can isolate this network. That basically means it can't talk to any other of our VLANs. We don't need to do that. And this is where we would allow internet access. So again, if you had, I know a lot of people out there create IoT networks that don't need access to the internet because of how they operate. You could uncheck this box and that IoT network would not have access to the internet. So that's something, we're going to leave it there. And then there's content filtering. Now this isn't going to alert you when anybody's surfing around or going to bad stuff, but it will automatically kind of create a content filtering setting that's appropriate for work or family. If you hover over the little eyes here, it'll kind of tell you blocks explicit, pornographic, malicious domains, set search engines, YouTube are set in the safe mode, so you can't get in too much trouble. That would be for a work setting, and family is going to be very, very similar, okay? And then this multicast is important to be checked for your IoT networks and your home network that you're going to use to control those devices, because multicast or MDNS is used for that connectivity across VLANs, okay? Now we don't need to change anything down here, but we could. This is the IP range, so we could say I want my IP range to, when it starts handing out IPs, to start at 2.10, for example. So the first IP address that it would hand out when I connect a device to this network would be 2.10, okay? So you can do that. But we're just going to go ahead and say add. All right, so now you see we have home network, VLAN ID is 2, and it is a 192.168.2 network, okay? You can see MDNS, we have default and home network in there. We don't have to have default in there. We're actually going to take that out because our default network that our devices are on is not going to be controlling our IoT devices. Our home network and our IoT device network will be in there, okay? And there's some other settings in here. Again, I wouldn't mess with any of them by default, especially if you're just learning. But if there's something that has to be set specifically to make your network run, you might have to do a little homework on it, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and create our other networks real fast, but I am going to do it in front of you so you can see it done, so you kind of see it happen, and then we'll get on to the Wi-Fi. All right, and just like that, very quickly, all of our VLANs are created. If I go quickly over here to my Unifi devices, I didn't catch it. Maybe if I refresh it, we'll get to see it. Let me refresh. Okay, so you can see it's getting ready. We made changes, and now it's learning those changes, and it's implementing those VLANs inside its network configuration. And this is what's telling you that's happening, right? So if I was connected to this device, I may be booted off during some of these times while these changes are taking place. And then once you see it's green, online, ready to go, we can add some other configurations. So we make the change once, and it just tells all the devices that are relevant. Pretty cool. So next thing I want to do is we're going to create some Wi-Fi networks. And again, I'll put up a slide here or put up the previous slide so you guys can see which networks we're going to create. But we are going to create networks for our home network, devices that like our cell phone, our laptop, where we're going to do our Zoom meetings and things like that. That's going to be considered our home network. And then we'll create a Wi-Fi network for IoT devices, and then we will create a Wi-Fi for guest devices. So 3 different Wi-Fi networks. We don't need a Wi-Fi network for the default network because, again, we're kind of only using it for management or using Unifi equipment to connect to it. So we don't need a Wi-Fi network for that. So that's what we're going to do next. Basically, we're going to create 3 networks. One for our home Wi-Fi, okay? One for our IoT devices, and one for our guests to use. The default VLAN that we talked about earlier doesn't need a Wi-Fi network, so we're not going to create one for it, okay? I'm going to show you how, when you create a Wi-Fi network, you can assign it to a VLAN. Very, very easy to do. All right, so to get there, we're going to go back into our settings, okay? And we're going to be in this Wi-Fi menu, okay? Now, as you recall, when we set up our device for the first time, it asked us, do you know what you want your Wi-Fi to be? And I left that Unifi network in there just to kind of get things set up. So that is broadcasting on my device right now. If I opened up my cell phone and searched for Wi-Fi networks, I would see one called Unifi, all right? Now, we have 2 options here. We don't want to leave this as Unifi, so I can click on this network and just change it the way I want, okay? Or, just so you understand how to delete one, you could click on Manage, check the box, and hit Remove, right? 2 different ways, accomplishes the same thing. So I'm just going to go in and edit it, and it'd be the same as me creating one new, okay? So I'm going to just hit Done, and we're going to click on this network, all right? And this is the name up here, so we can make changes to it. Now remember, if I was connected to my device while configuring things, this is the part I would get booted out for. So if you're trying to make these changes remotely, understand that there could be some interruptions here, okay? So we're going to call this one, and I'm going to keep mine very simple. You guys, I know you guys get creative with your Wi-Fi names. I see surveillance van and FBI and all sorts of crazy stuff. Do what you will, but for this video, we're going to keep things very simple, and we're just going to call this home Wi-Fi, okay? I'm just going to call it home Wi-Fi. You're going to pick a password. You're going to pick something that's appropriate, guys. Don't pick stupid passwords. This is your network. This is where you're going to do your online banking, so please choose a password appropriately. On the other side of things, don't go too crazy, right? I've seen 35 special characters, and you hand that to someone to connect to the network, or you can't remember it. It sucks. So actually, short phrases. You can put spaces in your password. Short phrases are very, very secure. That's what I would recommend, all right? Doesn't even have to have capitals or special characters, anything. Just type a phrase with some spaces, and I think you'll like it. All right, so network. Network is another name for VLAN. So it's basically asking us, which network do you want home Wi-Fi to be on? So we got a little drop down here, and now you can see we can choose the home network. So when anybody connects to this Wi-Fi network, they will get an IP address from our home network VLAN, 192.168.2. whatever, right? Okay, now I'm going to check this click manual here, and we're going to just kind of work down the list. Guys, I'm not going to get on a sidetrack on pre-shared keys, okay? It probably deserves its own video. There's some special things and specifics about it. I get asked all the time, why don't you set it up with pre-shared keys? The short version for this video is, if we turn that on, we have to turn off the 6 gigahertz band, okay? So we will only be able to use 2.4 and 5 because that is not compatible. So without going down the rabbit hole, just understand for this video and a Wi-Fi 7 access point that has all 3 bands, we can't use pre-shared keys unless we want to turn off some of those features. Okay, we don't need a hotspot turned on. This is for you could use this checkbox for your IoT network if you'd like to. I only recommend turning it on if you have trouble connecting your IoT devices to your IoT Wi-Fi network. However, it's there. It kind of tweaks some settings that makes it a little bit more conducive for IoT networks. We're just going to leave that unchecked. You can see we got all 3 bands on. We want to take advantage of those. MLO, again, probably a little bit deserves its own video. It's a new feature, but basically it allows you to get crazy fast Wi-Fi because it uses all 3 bands at once. You can also see it's in early access. For today's video, we're just going to leave it off, but if you're welcome to check it to see if it gives you those mega fast speeds at your house, but that's what it is. And it's a pretty new feature. They said it's been coming for a while, and I think it's stable. I haven't really used it enough to know if it's stable or works really well. All right, band steering. Band steering is a setting I do like to look at, and we're going to set it differently depending on which network we choose. But band steering, basically, when your device connects to your Wi-Fi network, it's going to say, hey, why don't you use one of these faster bands, right? So if 2.4 is fast, 5 gigahertz is faster, and 6 gigahertz is even faster yet. So if we hover over this, it's going to say, hey, compatible clients will be notified to move to the 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, which is a little bit faster and a little less susceptible to interference. So I want my phones, my laptops, the devices I use and need to go fast. I want them connected to 5 gigahertz. So I'm going to leave that on for my home network. And then we have fast roaming and BSS transition. Those are settings that allow you to roam around your house. And if you had multiple access points, in this case we don't, but if you did, or you added some, or planning on adding some, this allows your device to roam a little better. It's kind of that communication between the device and the AP that says, hey, I'm closer over here, you should switch. And so I generally turn this on for networks where you have devices that move around, like the home network, okay? Everything else, we're just gonna leave as is, all right? We're gonna hit apply changes. So now we have a network called home networks. If I come over here and hit refresh, you can see that our router is gonna be learning those networks here as it refreshes, okay? You can see, yep, getting ready, sending out those configurations. I won't show you that every time, but I just wanted to show you that, whenever you make changes, it's learning those, okay? All right, so let's go create our other networks quickly. And again, I will just kind of do this a little faster, but I will do it in front of you so you can see it. All right, so you notice that I turned off band steering. I also turned off BSS transition, and I didn't turn on fast roaming. Now, the reason I'm doing it this way for IoT devices is generally your IoT devices are smart plugs or TVs or smart whatever devices, and they sit one place. They're not going to roam around. So we don't need BSS transition turned on or fast roaming because they sit still. Once they connect to an AP, they'll just connect. Now, I also generally don't like to try to tell my IoT devices to connect to a faster band. A lot of smart devices are actually pretty dumb, and so they struggle with this. And so you'll run into this loop where it'll say, connecting the network, up, can't connect. Connecting the network, can't connect. And that's because this band steering is trying to force that device, that compatible device, even though some of these devices aren't even compatible when it does that, but it's going to try and talk it into it. So I don't even want that to happen. I just want it to connect how it's supposed to connect, and it's not roaming around. So that's why I set it this way for the IoT network, okay? So we're going to add network. All right, so let's talk about the guest network a little bit. You can see we have some additional settings popping up in here, and I just kind of want to explain generally what they are. Okay, so we'll start at the top and work our way down. So right now, if someone goes to our guest network, they would get a captive portal. It's basically a hotspot page. You see them when you go to cafes where it says, welcome to the cafe Wi-Fi. Click here to accept our terms and conditions before connecting and blah, blah, blah. You can actually build that in your house, and it deserves its own Wi-Fi, but you can get to all those hotspots. See, it says the hotspot portal can be found in Insights, and click here to get to it. It just takes you right there. You can design your own guest Wi-Fi portal, which is actually kind of cool. For today, we're not going to do that. So we're not going to have a portal, but just know that you can turn that on or off here. So now our guests are just going to connect to a Wi-Fi network just like our other devices, but they're going to be on an isolated guest network, okay? They can't talk to anything we don't want them to. All right, we're going to leave all the bands on. Again, a guest might have a phone and might need to roam around, so I'm going to, I want to leave band steering on. I want them to have a good experience. And we're going to leave BSS transition on, and we'll turn on fast roaming. No problem, okay? So everything else we're just kind of leaving. So a lot of it is set very similarly than how we set the home network, okay? Now, the one thing you might see in here is there's a client device isolation. So you can actually turn this on where devices inside the guest network, so let's say you had two babysitters and they were here at the same time. If they connected to the guest network, neither one of those devices will be able to talk to each other, even though they're in the same guest network. That's what client device isolation does, okay? So let's give the official meaning here. Prevents wireless clients on the same AP, okay, from communicating with each other. This may inhibit the functionality of AirPlay, Chromecast, Sonos, and other things. So it's a kind of a proceed with caution kind of thing, but it's actually seen as something pretty common in guest networks, right? When I go to a cafe and I'm connecting to their public guest Wi-Fi, I don't want to be able to, or I shouldn't be able to connect to the other person over there who is also on the guest Wi-Fi. This is where that comes into play, okay? So we're going to leave it set like this and hit Add Wi-Fi Network. All right, so now we have our 3. They are all done. And just to see what happens here, let's click on my Wi-Fi networks here. I'm going to just search for one, and let's see what we can see. All right, there's a home Wi-Fi, IoT Wi-Fi, and I'm guessing guest Wi-Fi will pop in there here anytime. So, as you can see, it's now broadcasting all 3 bands everywhere, okay? Now, one thing I could have done is I could have turned off the 6 gigahertz band for IoT. Not many IoT, if any, are ever going to communicate on 6 gigahertz. However, I know of one exception, right? I have an Amazon Fire Stick that uses Wi-Fi 6E, which is on the 6 gigahertz band. And so that, to me, is an IoT device. And I want it to connect to 6 gigahertz if it can, because I'm streaming, and that's going to give me the best streaming, that's going to give me the best streaming experience. There it is. So, there are exceptions. It kind of depends on what your IoT networks are. If they're just, a Lutron hub and smart switches and things like that, chances are they're not going to operate on 6 gigahertz, okay? So, kind of understand what's going in your network and set things accordingly. Let's talk switch ports here for a second. So there's basically 2 different types of switch ports that I want to discuss for today, and then we'll get in and I'll show you how to configure them, okay? There are access ports and there are trunk ports, all right? We're going to keep this very basic and very simple. When you plug a switch into another switch, you want that port to be set up as a trunk port, okay? When you plug an access point into a switch, you want those ports to be set up as trunk ports. And the reason for this is because trunk ports allow all VLAN traffic to pass through a single port. So it's handling multiple VLANs through a single port. When you have this secondary switch that you plugged in, you want to be able to assign all the VLANs on it as well. And that access point is broadcasting many different Wi-Fi networks on many different VLANs. And so when I connect to the IoT network, I need to get an IP address from that one. When I connect to the home network, I need to get an IP address from that. So we need to allow all that VLAN traffic to pass through a single port. So access points and switches need to be plugged into trunk ports, okay? On the other side, you have the access port, okay? Devices like your TV, like your laptop, maybe even your camera NVR or your NAS, right? All we care about is the device that's plugged in. It's not going to be handing out any other IP addresses, so we want to create those as access ports, right? So we just basically make it an IoT port, or a home network port, or even a guest network port, if that's something you guys are going to do, okay? Those are access ports. Let me show you how it's configured, okay? So we're going to go over here into our switch port viewer here. You guys saw this a little bit ago. It may look a little different. That's only because I turned on the what ports are available versus only having ones that are in use. So I just clicked this and it shows me all the ports. So you see that we have our T-Mobile USA, right here plugged into port 4. That's our internet port. You might also notice that port 5 is also set up as a possible internet port, okay? Now with the UDR7, you can actually have 2 ISPs plugged into this at the same time and do failover and load balancing and all sorts of special routing. We're not going to do that. So let's just say we want port 5, this 10 gig port, let's say we want to use it on the LAN. So let's go ahead and convert it to a LAN port because we don't have a secondary ISP. Now, you can do this multiple ways. This is just one of the ways. Since we're in this screen, I'm just going to go ahead and click on port 5, and I'm just going to say change the LAN. And it's going to give us a little message. And after we say OK, now we have a 10 gig LAN port that we can plug our NAS into or another switch into and have a 10 gig backhaul. Okay, so simple as that. So let's just say for this video, we're going to plug in our NAS. So first thing I want to do is name this port. So we're going to call this UNAS, because that's what generally is going to be plugged in there. And let's say our NAS is going to be on our home network, so we can share files and do all that stuff from our home PCs, okay? That's just one way to do it. I'm not saying you have to do it that way, but for our example, we're going to put it on the home network. So you have this little drop down here. We're going to choose home network. And now when I plug in that NAS, after I hit save, of course, or apply, when I plug in that NAS, it should receive an IP address from 192.168.2.whatever because that is the native VLAN of that single port, okay? However, our NAS is still set up as a trunk port. We need to convert it to an access port because all we want it to be, we only care about it communicating on the home network. So we're going to go down to the next session, and the allow all means allow all VLAN traffic to go through. We're going to actually choose block all, which I know is scary because it says block all, but that's exactly what we want to do. We only want this native VLAN traffic to pass through the port, and we're going to block everything else. So I'm going to go ahead and say apply. And now you can see the native VLAN for port 5 is the home network, and we have it set up as an access port. Okay? Now we'll do it one more time. Let's just say that port 2 is going to be our TV in the office. So we're going to click on port 2, and we're going to go Office TV. And we want that to be on the IoT network, right? So we're going to go down here. We're going to choose the IoT network, right? And then we're going to go ahead and choose block all because we only want it to be on that. And we're going to say apply changes. So now we've made that an access port on the IoT network. One last example, we're going to go into port 1. Let's say this is going to be a future AP. So we're going to call that future AP. All right. And we want our access point to be on the default network, which is great because that's where we manage our equipment. And we want it to be a trunk port. So there really isn't much else we have to do. We're going to go ahead and just say apply changes after we give the port a name. And that's how you do it. Now, if you have a bunch of switch ports that you want to set to the same VLAN, you can do that in Ubiquiti. There's not a ton of switch ports on this, but let me just show you how it's done, and then we'll move on with the video. But you can actually click into multiple ports at once, okay? And this is going to overwrite what I just did, but let's just say we want all of these to be in the IoT network. So I can actually click multiple. You can see that they're also displayed up here. Now you are going to have to click into them individually to change the descriptions. It doesn't work that way, but we can change them all to the IoT network, and we can do block all. And when we hit apply, they will, it's basically saying, hey, you have multiple ports selected. We're going to confirm that. And now we'll have multiple on the IoT network. You just saw them change right here. Notice our descriptions did not change. So we would have to go into this port, click on it, and change this to, kitchen TV or whatever. All right, so it's in the right VLAN, but it has the wrong description. So just understand you can change multiple ports at once, and if you do, it's going to give you a little warning. So that's basically switch ports in a nutshell, and hopefully that'll help you guys with your configuration. Next, we are going to talk about some advanced features. One of the great benefits of using a device like this is to get to take advantage of some of the advanced security features like intrusion prevention, intrusion detection, territory blocking, all sorts of stuff. So I just want to show you where this is. Some of this stuff you might have to kind of play with on your own, but I just want to kind of show you where it's at. So let's go take a look. All right, so to get there, we're going to go into our settings again. We're going to go into the security tab this time. All right, and we're going to go over to protection. Now we're going to spend some time over here in the traffic and firewall rules next, but for right now, we're going to click on the protection tab, okay? Now they do have a paid cyber secure by Proofpoint thing you can get. If you're really concerned about stuff hitting your network, you can apply for this. I don't have any pricing to be part of this video, but you could click here to activate it and turn on some especially paid enhanced security features, which is pretty cool. Content filtering we already touched. If I click on this, it'll just take us to where we could turn on the work filter or family filter. I was kind of showing you that when we created the VLANs. All right, so you can turn on ad blocking. So ad blocking basically blocks ad domains, reduces ads, blah, 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 to kind of help make sure you have a good browsing experience. So if we check this checkbox, we can say which networks we want to do ad blocking. You don't have to do them on all of them. So maybe you only care about ad blocking on your home network where you're actually browsing with a PC. So you could do that and just click save. All right. There's region blocking. So region blocking, I kind of showed a little bit. And there's two ways you can do this. But this is a way, hey, I want to block all traffic from China. I do not want China or Russia or Kazakhstan or whatever, all these crazy places over there. We can block that, right? So we can just say no traffic can go in or out from those places. So we could click on region blocking, click block, both directions, which I think is what you want. And if I click block, select territory, I can just go search, and there is a typing search here, so I can type China if I'd like to. So this is one way you could do it. You could just go down and select all the countries. However, there is a limit on how many you can select, okay? You can't just say everything but America, just so you know. It won't work that way, so I'd pick your nasty players that you want to kind of focus on. Now, another way to do this, I'm going to go ahead and hit apply changes here. Oops, let me uncheck this. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit apply changes so it'll keep our ad blocking turned on. The other way is to do it over in the Insights area where I was showing you earlier. You click on the Geo tab, and it's going to open this map. And I can zoom in and move around, and then I can click on an area. This is the Russian Federation. If I hover over it, you can see this little window comes up to block it. As soon as I hit block, that turns red, and now I can kind of go through. So if you're good at your geography and you want to block things this way, you absolutely can, right? You can go through and just click things. I don't think I can't do a range. I have to hover over it. So the other way might be a little faster if you know exactly which countries you like to block, okay? And it looks like I can click on Manage Blocking Region and takes me right back to where we just were, okay? So that's kind of cool. 2 different ways to do it. That's up to you on how you want to do it. But that is available to you. Just understand you can't hit Control All and turn them all on because it won't allow that. Even if you have one of the more higher powered routers like the UDM Pro or something, you still can't select them all. So, you know, be selective a little bit. All right, encrypted DNS. This is just something to kind of help hide your traffic when you're online. I don't really see any reason for it not to be on. I usually turn it on in my networks, but just understand you could create some issues by having this. Some devices struggle with encrypted DNS, okay? So just kind of do it at your own risk there, and maybe if you had some issues, you can come and turn it off. A honeypot is kind of like a little set in a trap to catch malicious players on the network. We don't need to go into that. The identification, basically this is saying, do you only care about the device and the traffic only? So we want to identify, at least in my opinion, we want to identify as much of the traffic as possible. But if we hover over this, it says identifies and shows information on the type of devices that are present on the network and the traffic sent through the Unifi gateway. So I say the more data, the better, personally. And then we're going to get down here into the intrusion prevention. So we can go ahead and turn that on. We can choose what networks we want it to be on. I'm just going to leave it on for default home and IoT. And then if we set it to notify, we're kind of using IDS, intrusion detection system, because we're not taking an action, okay? IPS stands for intrusion prevention, and that would be the notify and block, okay? So typically that's what I would recommend. I want my gateway to take action and just block something if it doesn't like it. And then this is the stuff it can block, right? Botnets, and each one of these has a subcategory. So there's, you know, inside here there's 3 things, right? So you can select all, or if you want to allow certain things to talk, right? There's some people that do some peer-to-peer stuff on their home network. So, you know, you could turn on peer-to-peer if you wanted to. Again, just kind of understand it's going to block what it sees as bad, and typically these are seen as malicious type of traffic, but by default, typically, I leave everything on, right? I just let it do its job, and it's always done pretty well for me. I don't get a lot of false positives, but every once in a while, you may have to kind of dive in. Just kind of depends on what you do on your network. So this allows you to kind of set up some advanced security features, one of the pros of using this device, and still not lose any throughput. Now, one of the things that how these devices are rated is there's the speed of the device. Technically, this device can do 10 gigabit networking, right? But with advanced security features turned on, because it has to check every packet and do all this stuff on the network to inspect everything, a lot of times that slows down your network. There's more overhead happening in your router. So the UDR7 is set to where it can still do 2.3 gigabits per second of throughput with all these advanced features turned on. So a huge step in the right direction. The old original UDR it would throttle it down from a 1 gig device down to like 600 or 700 megabits per second. So again, it's just one of those things. It's nice. They've fixed some of these features. This device just has some more horsepower, so it can handle that overhead a little bit better. We're going to go ahead and say apply changes and continue on with the video. All right. So next we are going to do firewall rules. And again, one of the benefits, one of the great things about using Ubiquiti is you get to create these VLANs and you get to turn on those enhanced security features. And you also get to secure your VLANs. So it's one thing to create separate networks, it's another thing to secure them. That's what these firewall rules do. So, buckle in. All right. Now, what I hope you are able to take away from this section of the video is generally how to operate the zone firewall matrix, okay? Ubiquiti has moved to this zone-based firewall starting with network version 9, and I think this is where it's going to continue to go. They do have an old version of the firewall, okay? And so if you would like to configure your firewall rules that way, I'll be sure to link my firewall video down below so you can follow those rules and those concepts. It's a good video. The whole video is just about firewall rules, so we really kind of dive into things pretty well. However, I would encourage you to maybe move away from that and go with this new zone base. I think this is the direction things are going, okay? But keep in mind, this is the area of the setup where you can lock yourself out, break things, make stuff not work. Remember, I told you guys, connect all your devices. So before you even start this, everything should be connected, everything should be running, you're streaming on your TVs, your Fire Sticks are working, your Rokus, your Sonos is talking, everything works, okay? You can control those devices from your phone, it all works. Because by default, everything can talk to everything. When you go through this, that is all gonna change, okay? So make sure your stuff is working. The second thing I'm gonna recommend you do is a backup. I'm gonna recommend that you take a backup of your network so if by chance you make a mistake, you can come back to this exact spot where you left off and try again, right? You won't have to go recreate your Wi-Fi, recreate your VLANs and do all that from scratch because you're gonna have to factory reset your router to get this to work, right? And so if you mess up, it's nice to be able to kind of go back to this location, go back to this spot in the configuration and try again, okay? So let's talk about the backup. We're gonna come over here, we're gonna click on settings, we're gonna go into our control plane. Let's see, a couple different ways. Yeah, actually we're gonna go into system, we're gonna go to backups, and here is the backup configuration file. I'm just gonna choose download. We only need settings. We don't really need like all the logs and stuff, so you can do settings. But if for some reason you're doing this days later and you wanted to keep a lot of those old logs, you can also keep the settings plus 7 days worth of all the information your stuff learned, or 30 days or whatever. But typically for this, I'm just gonna go ahead and say settings only, and we're gonna go ahead and say download. And it's going to copy a download of our network configuration to our computer. Awesome, right? So it's right here in downloads. We're going to choose this one, and you can see it's got a timestamp of 9.5. The version is 9.1.120, and it's just called Network Backup from today's date. So I'm going to just go ahead and say save. Now I will have the ability to restore this. Now restoring is done very easily, okay? I'm just going to quickly walk through it with you. When you set up your router, remember we set it up with the app, if you went through there actually is or would be a drop-down that says, do you want to set this up as a new device or do you want to restore it? Because we use Unifi's cloud configuration, it'll just be a drop-down that says, I want to restore to this backup, and it'll restore it right from the app, right from your phone during the setup process. Let's just say you don't have that or you didn't see it or whatever, no problem. You can also just set it up as a new device so it's just sitting there by itself. And you can come into the settings, go into system, backups, and choose restore. Once you choose restore, you can choose the file that you just used, which I don't know where my downloads is. There it is. And you can pick that file here, and it will click OK, and it will restore everything up to this point. Okay, so that's important to do. Make sure you guys take a backup here. This is a good spot to do it in. Everything else is fine. You can tweak and change on the go. If you set something wrong here, and it happens, you could lock yourself out. And so we don't want to see that happen. All right. So we're going to go into security. Now, one thing I'm going to call out that's going to be different on yours than mine. When I record the video, I actually kind of got so far and I was like, oh man, I should have said this. And so I can't go back to the way it was before without factory resetting everything and setting it all back up like I just talked about. So yours is going to have this little thing up here at the top of the screen says update to zone-based firewall. You're going to click on that, you're going to say okay or next, and it's going to do it. It only takes about 2 seconds to do it. And then after you do that, you're going to see this screen right here. Okay, so I can't show it to you because I'd have to go through a lot of steps or restore my whole network just to continue recording. So I'm hoping that you guys can just click on the update to zone-based firewall rule and click OK. All right, then you'll get to this screen and you'll be with me and caught up. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit this little up arrow here, get that out of the way. It's just a diagram that pops down so you guys kind of see how zone-based rules work, but it's just in the way for right now. All right, so First thing I want to take note of is that by default, you get some zones by doing this. It's going to create an internal zone, external zone, which is your internet. Internal zone is where it automatically sticks all your VLANs. Gateway, VPN, right? So if you use Teleport or other VPN services, you have a VPN zone that you need to create rules to allow them to talk to certain networks, okay? That's going to be some of the conceptual stuff we're talking about here. Hotspot or guest, right? And notice that when we told Unifi that this was a guest network, it automatically put it in the guest hotspot. And guess what? We don't have to create a single rule for the guest network. It's already done just by being in that hotspot. If we hover over this, it'll say optionally use this zone for guest or untrusted networks that have restricted access. If the landing page is enabled in the hotspot settings, guests are also redirected for authentication. Now we turned off the hotspot portal, but if you had that in there, it would create all the rules to allow authentication to happen and everything. So it's great. We put it in there and we don't have to do anything else with the guest network. And then there's DMZ. DMZ is typically used if you're hosting a web server at your house or you want something to be able to bypass your firewall settings. Sometimes people have direct access to their gaming system, so they'll put it in the DMZ zone. We're not going to do anything crazy like that for this video, but just know it's there. Now, as we scroll down, you have this zone-based matrix. The rows are the source, so where the traffic is coming from. I need this VLAN to talk to this VLAN. The source is where it's coming from. And the destination, where it's going to, is the columns, okay? So if I wanted to make a rule that says I want all my internal traffic, I'd come up here to the internal as my source, to my hotspot, for example, I could click on this box and this is where I would create that rule. It kind of gives you that visual about where these rules are taking place in this matrix. And it takes a little getting used to, guys, especially if you're used to the old way of doing it. But I've really come to like it. I think it works really well, and it's easy to kind of know where to go to create new rules, okay? So, for example, the VPN rule, if I wanted to create a rule that says my VPN zone, so from here to my internal zone or to my DMZ or whatever, I could click on the appropriate box and create the allow or block rule accordingly. Now, like I mentioned earlier, by default, everything can talk to everything. That's why you see a ton of green on here. There is a ton of green because by default, all your networks can talk to each other, okay? And before you get started, you should have done a backup and all your devices should be connected and working and running and everything. You should be able to control your IoT devices from your phone. You should be streaming. Whatever it is that you're doing in your home network, all that should be working before you take another step into this process, okay? Because we're gonna break all that in about 2 moves. All right. So if you've seen my videos before, some of this may look maybe something you've seen before. So, but if you're new to this, this is kind of how I do it. Again, argue with me in the comments. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But this is generally how I set mine up, and we'll just kind of go from there. So we mentioned all the green. When I create 2 new zones, and I'm going to create 2. It's going to create a lot of red. And so here's my mindset on why I do it this way. If you already have firewall rules in there and you converted those rules to a zone, I recommend deleting them all out, right? You'd go in here, there'd be a checkbox here that said custom. You'd select it so only the custom rules are down there. I'd select them all because there's a manage down here. You'd click manage, delete, start over from scratch. I just think it works better, okay? It makes it cleaner. By converting rules, it just makes it messy, okay? So once you convert, we're going to start from scratch, no matter if you had rules in there before or not. Now, my train of thought is this. With having everything talk to each other, if I want to create restrictions, I have to go close a bunch of doors. I have to close all these ports and stuff that these can communicate on, okay? And that's one way of doing it, right? You kind of err on the side of caution because hopefully you don't close a door that you need, okay? I like the other way of doing it. When you create new zones, and you're going to see here in just a second, when you create these new zones, everything is blocked by default. And then you just go open the doors that you need. It's going to create a more secure network, but it also, like I said, runs the risk of blocking something that you didn't want it to block, and you have to go figure out which door to open to make that to work. Now, we're going to give you a good starting point here, and hopefully you can kind of learn conceptually what you need to do to apply to your specific situation. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to go ahead and create 2 zones. The first zone I'm going to call secure zone. And again, this may be familiar to you if you've watched any of my other videos. This is how I like to do it. You can call it safe zone, unsafe zone. You can call it whatever you want. Trusted, not trusted, whatever, right? That's how we're splitting it up, right? And so I'm going to choose my network. So I'm going to choose my default network and my home network for my secure zone. I want my home network where all my computing and banking and stuff is done. And I want where I have my Unifi equipment. I want all that protected, right? I want it, it's trusted. I want it protected. You can call it protected and unprotected, whatever you want to do, all right? So I'm going to click save. I'm going to click add entry. It's going to give me this big scary warning, and I'm going to say proceed. All right. So now we have a new zone in here, and home and default are in it. All right, so we're going to keep going. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new zone here. We're going to call this unsecure zone. Whoops, if I could type. All right, and we're going to stick our IoT network in that. Remember, guest is already taken care of. We don't have to do anything. So we're going to do there, hit add entry, hit the big scary message, and now we have a lot of red. So right now, if you feel like testing, just know that anything in your home network can't talk to anything in any other network, right? You can't ping devices, you can't talk to anything. Your home network's restricted from your IoT network, IoT is restricted from home, everything's restricted from default. You're basically stuck all your VLANs on their own island. And let's look at it in the matrix. So if I have two networks in my secure zone, so if I go from my secure zone, so I'm going down to the secure zone and over to the unsecure zone, you can see block all. However, you can also see block all on the secure zone, which means my home network can't talk to my default network. My default network can't talk to my home network, right? So we've just blocked it all in 2 moves, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to open these doors that we need to make this work, right? So don't panic. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure our home network, not the whole secure zone, but just the home network, can talk to whatever it wants, okay? So it's going to be able to talk to anything, all right? What that means is that traffic originating from the home VLAN can talk to IoT, can talk to guests, can talk to internal, or can talk to the default, whatever. And that traffic that it's talking to, you'll see in just a second, will be able to reply back. That's great. Now I can control devices again. However, devices on the IoT network will not be able to just communicate with my home network. This is a one-way deal. It's only one way, and those devices can talk back, but only because they're part of the conversation. The traffic has to originate in the home VLAN. So let's set it up. All right, so we're gonna go down. This is gonna be a rule from the secure zone to the unsecure zone first, right? We're gonna create a rule. Right now, it's block all traffic, and I can't delete this. It's built in, but firewall rules are executed in order. So if I create an allow rule, which is what we're gonna do, or allow policy, these are called policies. If I create an allow policy and put it above this rule, it'll kick into gear before it gets to the block. So basically it's gonna say, all right, home can talk to anything it wants, block everything else. That's kind of how it works, okay? So keep in mind the order of your rules count. So we're gonna create a policy. We get this nice little menu over here pop up. I recommend giving your policies a descriptive name so you know what they're doing. Don't just call it home any or something. Call it allow home to any unsecure. Now, if I had multiple VLANs in the unsecure zone, let's say I had a camera network or some other kind of network that I created, a kids network, whatever, by creating a rule that says the home VLAN can talk to anything in unsecure, I would be allowed to talk to both of those at the same time. I don't have to differentiate the two. That's a big difference from the previous firewall rules and how they used to be set up, because you have to make 2 rules. Now I can say you can talk to anything inside that entire zone. You could have 50 VLANs in there, and you could say home can talk to all of them in one rule, which is pretty cool, pretty powerful. All right, so the source zone is going to be our secure. We're going to specify though, we don't want anything in the secure zone. We want which network. So we're going to click a network. We're going to choose home. Okay. And then we're going to say, we're going to come down here. This is going to be an allow rule. And then this checkbox right here basically says, do you want the traffic to be able to reply back? Yes, we do. We want, when we turn on the light with our phone or whatever, or we turn up the volume on Sonos, we want those zones or those things to be able to say, I did it, and show you on your screen. We want it to be able to talk back. Okay, so we're going to allow the return traffic. The destination is going to be anywhere in the secure zone, but I don't have to do that. I could just say select the IoT network if I wanted to, but being that there's only one network in here, we'll just leave it as any. That way, if I ever add other unsecure VLANs or zones, excuse me, if I ever add any other VLANs to the unsecure zone, this rule, I'll automatically be able to talk to them from the home network. Awesome. So, you know, it allows you to kind of grow your VLANs a little bit. And we want to say any version, any protocol, any port, anytime. I want my home to have full access to the IoT network, just like that. So we're going to add that policy. And you can see it added it above this block all rule. Okay? Pretty cool. So now we've allowed all versions, all protocols of the secure zone, specifically the home network in the secure zone, to talk to anything on the unsecure zone. Anything. Okay? Which in this case is our IoT network. Pretty cool. All right, so now we have some, you'll see it puts a little 2 in there saying, hey, we got a couple rules in here. So if you're curious about what these rules say, click here. All right. Perfect. So now you can run your lights again, run your Sonos speakers, talk to your TV. You should be able to do that right now. Okay, so I also want my home network to be able to talk to my default network, right? I just do. I just want, if I want to SSH into an AP or SSH into a device, I want to be able to do that. And I could turn on just that port that SSH uses. I could really kind of keep it restricted. But in this case, I'm given full bore access from my home network to these other networks. So we're going to do a rule, basically the same rule, but from secure zone to secure zone, right? Because both of these are in the secure zone. So I'm going to go in here, create a policy. We're going to allow home to default. Okay, allow home to default. We're going to say specific network is our source. That's going to be home. Okay, this is an allow rule. We're going to allow return traffic. We're going to remain in the secure zone, and we're going to say network, select, default. Okay, save. And again, all protocols. Now I could narrow this down. I could say only on port 22 for SSH or only HTTP or HTTPS. But again, we're keeping this very simple. You guys are welcome to drill this down as deep as you want. I hope you can learn the concepts for that. All right, add policy. And now we have that in there too. So we have allow home to default and allow home to default return traffic. And then we also have allow home to any unsecure. Basically anything in the unsecure zone, okay? Now, I'm actually going to change this name to any unsecure zone. That way we know we're talking about a zone versus a specific VLAN, okay? I just think it makes it, you'll remember it a little bit better. Okay, so now what we've done is we've allowed our home network to talk to anything in the IoT network, and we've allowed our home network to talk to our default network. But those networks cannot talk directly to home. Home is still on an island. And I'm not going to do all the ping tests and stuff. I do have some videos where I do that and I show all this stuff in action. You're welcome to watch those if you're kind of doing your homework or if you're still a little bit nervous. I do take a deeper dive in those videos on this, okay? But for all intents and purposes here, I'm just going to kind of leave this pretty conceptual, okay? All right, guys. So just by adding that one rule, we've done a lot of different things, okay? We've allowed our home network to talk to the IoT network. That's the big one, okay? Now with that comes a few things. You should be able to AirPlay to your Apple TV. You should be able to connect and run your Lutron hub or your Philips Hue light switch. All that should work. You should be able to access that. If you have a home assistant sitting in that IoT network, you should be able to log into that device and control devices and set them up and do all sorts of things, okay? That one rule allows that to happen. And just to kind of give you a little bit more, I'll also link another video down in the description where I actually demonstrate how that one simple rule makes all this other stuff work and talk about IoT specifically, because I get that question a lot, right? For the next part of this video, I want to talk about the actual gateway zone. Now, I told you we'd circle back to this, and it's time to do it. And I think the only way really to understand it truly is to kind of demonstrate a little bit. So I am going to do a little bit of a demonstration here to help you grasp the concept of what we're doing and what we're blocking. Because I feel like this is a little bit confusing, okay? So let's go ahead and get in there. But just for the setup, I'm letting you know, if you go over into clients, I've connected my iPhone to the home network, okay? So technically it can talk to everything right now. And I've connected the laptop I'm using right now to the IoT network because I want to demonstrate something, okay? Now, if I had another device, like right now, my IoT laptop cannot talk to my phone. And I'm going to show that to you. So if I bring up a box here, okay, my phone is 192.168.2.158. So I'm going to just try and ping that from the IoT network. Remember, my laptop's on the IoT. Ping 192.168.2.158. Okay. There you see it. It can't talk. It's going and it's getting shut down by the firewall. Cannot talk, okay? We can even look at that happening in the logs. So we can come over here to our logs. We can go to triggers. Oh, it must take a second for it to get into the logs. I'll try refreshing the screen here real quick. Yeah, it must take a little bit of time, but it would actually say home laptop can't talk to phone, and it would say blocked by this rule, okay? So this is a way you can look at what's happening. Sorry, I didn't realize it took a little bit to get in there. Okay, so we can't do that. But I'll tell you what we can do. Remember, I'm on the IoT network. If I wanted to go to 192.168, say 2.1, right? I went to 2.58, I couldn't get there. 2.1 is the gateway, right? So when you create a VLAN, and you come in here and we created our networks, okay? So we went in, we created all these networks, okay? The home network, for example, is a 192, the host address. This is the gateway address, 192.168.2.1, okay? And every one of our VLANs has a .1 address. This is 1.1, okay? That's a gateway. IoT network is 3.1, that's a gateway. And our guest network is 99.1. So this router, this UDR7, this Dream Router 7 actually is 4 different gateways, right? All the traffic is routing through the router, but each one has a gateway address. And it's usually, in this case, it's the .1 address. So I may not be able to get to devices on the other side of the fence. I may not be able to go from IoT to home and talk to devices. That's called inter VLAN routing. You're talking from one VLAN to the next, but I can get to the gateway. And let me show you. So if I go over here to the gateway, I can go to 192.168.2.1, okay? Hit enter. And I can get to, whoops, let me hit proceed to 2.1, and I can get to my router from the IoT network. We don't want this to happen. We want to block this. We don't need devices on the IoT network being able to contact the gateway. And I'll even take it a step further. I can get to any gateway. There's 99.1. Oh, it does block. Oh, nope, it doesn't. I didn't think it did. All right, so there's 99.1. I can get to the gateway that way. So I have 4 different ways right now to get from the IoT network to my gateway and try to attack my router. Let's just say you had a bad player on the network, right? This is what he's going to try and do. So we want to restrict this, okay? The first rule allows home to talk to everything, right? Devices on this network to talk to devices on this network. Now we need to restrict access to the gateway itself. And we're going to do that with the gateway zone. And that's why I wanted to explain this to you guys, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. Now, you can see we're connecting on HTTP, right? So you can see not HTTPS, which basically means this is port 80. And then we could also do HTTPS. We're going to block that, which is port 443. And then we also don't want to be able to SSH. And I don't have PuTTY installed, but basically SSH is a way to command line and use command line commands, type in commands to talk to certain devices. It's a very powerful tool. But we also don't want to allow SSH. So there's 3 ports, 3 very important ports that we want to block, okay? Because you got to remember, this gateway is doing a lot of stuff for us. It's doing DHCP and handing out IP addresses. It's doing DNS for us so we can resolve websites. It's allowing us to adopt devices. So we can't just block the gateways. Otherwise, we block other things, okay? So my take on this, the way I like to do it is, I like to just block those 3 ports from the IoT network or from the unsecure network to all the other gateways, okay? So these are the rules we're gonna make, but we're just gonna block port 80, which is HTTP, 443, which is HTTPS, and 22, which is SSH. Those three. Those are tools that we would use or someone could use to attack our router, okay? And one could argue that there's a couple others, but just to keep things very, very simple. Again, you guys can take it from here and block even more if you want to, all right? So let me close out of this. I'll go back into settings and security, get back to our zone matrix back here. And now we're going to create some rules from our IoT zone network in the unsecure zone to the gateway zone, okay? So we're gonna go down here to unsecure zone, and we're gonna go over here to gateway. Now, if you look in here, we have allow all traffic, because we're not blocking anything, and we have allow MDNS. Remember MDNS, multicast DNS, was something that we need to be on for you to be able to control all those devices. So we're also gonna have to reorder some things. I'll get to that, I don't wanna get ahead of myself. So let's go ahead and create our block rule, all right? So we're basically gonna block those 3 ports. So we're gonna go in here, we're gonna create a policy. This is gonna be block IoT. Actually, we're gonna block the whole unsecure zone. So if we create other VLANs later, we're covered, to gateways. And we're gonna say all gateways. All right, all gateways. All right, so here's how we're gonna do this. Our source is gonna be our unsecure zone, okay? Any network inside the unsecure zone, which is only 1 right now. This is going to be a block rule, okay? So we don't need to change it to allow, to any gateway. However, we need to change the ports. That's where this is done down here. You see port, optionally match any port on UDP or TCP. Don't worry about that right now, but just, we're only gonna block those 3 ports. All right, so we're going to create an object to do this. All right, so I'm going to create an object and I'm going to hit new. So when you create an object, basically allows you to take these 3 ports and stick it inside a box, and we're going to say block everything that's in this box, and we're going to allow all 3 of those ports. Okay, so that's all we're doing. We're just creating an object that includes all 3 of the ports. And we're going to say block these 3 ports, and we can add to that box later. We can take away things later. We can do whatever we want with the box, but we're just putting them all in one spot. So we kind of have to clump them together. So we are going to create a network object called, we'll just HTTP, HTTPS, and SSH, right? That's what these 3 ports are. We're gonna choose the network object. So we just have to pick the port number. So we're gonna say port 80, add, okay? Port 443, like I mentioned, add, and port 22, add. Okay, so now we've created this box, this network object, and put the 3 ports that we care about in there. All right, so we're going to create that network object, and now it's saying block any gateway address, .1, 1.1, 2.1, 3.1, 99.1 on these 3 ports specifically. Like when we went to it just a minute ago, we were on port 80. So once we apply this rule, we won't be able to do that anymore. Okay, and everything else we can just leave the same. So we're going to say add policy, get the big scary message because we're blocking to our gateway. So it's like, oh, this is where I think hangs up, people. This could break you if you don't do it. So please check over your work to make sure you got it right. Okay, so we're going to go in there. We're going to say okay. And now we have block unsecure zone to all gateways rule right here. All right, there it is. Now, it's not, but it could be, just to keep things clean, we want our allow MDNS rule to be above it. Remember I mentioned these are applied in order. And even though it's not blocking MDNS with this rule, I like to just keep it above. It just makes me feel good inside. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So in order to do that, I'm going to hit reorder, okay? And I can't move this one. See, it doesn't have the little bars here, so I get the hand. But I can move this one down. So when I move that one down under it, the MDNS becomes the top rule. I say done, and now I know I'm not blocking MDNS on any of my VLANs. I just know it's just, like I said, it makes me feel warm and cozy inside knowing that that's not done. Because this MDNS is required for that IoT stuff like we talked about, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and say done, and that's that. That rule is created. We should be good. Click out of there, yep. saved it. I'll just make sure. From unsecure zone to gateway. See, we got a little 3 in there. MDNS is on top, and then block. Now, IP config. I'm on the 3.1 network. Let's see if I can get to my own gateway, 3.1. Let's just see if I can do it. All right, so I'm going to pull up a new tab, 192.168.3.1. Spin and spin and spin and spin. Perfect. Now I know that if something is on my IoT, this unsecure, scary IoT network, it can't go and attack my router on these 3 ports, okay? And again, you guys can add ports if you want. Just remember, your gateway is doing a lot of functionality. I've seen it, you know, originally when I was doing it, I blocked a lot more, and it created havoc. People told me in the comments, now this doesn't work, this doesn't work. This is kind of a safety net way of doing it, but understand you can add to this, okay? If you want to block a lot more ports to the gateways, by all means, go for it. We're only blocking 3 for this video, all right? So I'm going to just show you the other ones we went to. I went to 2.1 earlier, okay? So I can't get to that anymore, and then 99.1 won't work either, okay? Well, I don't need to go that. So we're blocking all the gateways on those 3 ports to protect ourselves, and I think that's important. If you do those simple rules, so if I come in here and I just select custom, all policies, let me check this box. It's kind of like, show me everything, right? And I just say, show me all the custom rules. We created 3 rules today. 3 rules, and this is how it's set up. Our default network cannot talk to our home network, but our home network can talk to our default. And if you want to change that, you can, but there's no real reason to. Our home network can talk to anything in the unsecure zone, okay? And actually, it can talk to anything in the secure zone. If you add maybe a kid's VLAN or something, right, and you put it in the secure zone, by default, right now with these rules, your home network can talk to it. But your kid's network will not be able to talk to the home network, right? We're only allowing the home network all this access. So it can talk to anything in the unsecure, anything in the secure zone, and then we're blocking our unsecure zone, any VLAN in it, any VLAN you create in the future, whatever, any VLAN in the unsecure zone to be able to get to any of the gateways on those 3 ports, and we did it with 3 rules. By implementing this, you guys will have a fairly secure network. Now again, we're not going into any of the VPN stuff, or if you have special setups with the DMZ or whatever, you're gonna have to use the concepts here that we talked about to create rules for that. But hopefully this will get you a foot in the door and get you started, okay? So, we're gonna kick things off. I showed you in the beginning, hey, if you need to be able to expand your Wi-Fi coverage but don't have cables in the wall, I'm gonna show you how to do that next. All right, guys, so like I alluded to earlier, we're going to talk about how you expand your coverage if you do not have wires in the wall. Now, Ubiquiti gives you the ability to mesh to other access points. So what I can do is I can actually wirelessly add an access point to my Dream Router 7, and it will create a wireless mesh between the 2 and therefore expand my coverage. Okay? Now, the tricky part with doing these is you need to plug it in with a power injector and get it to power and connect wirelessly, and it can be a little bit messy. However, one device that works really, really well for this is the Express 7, the UX7. And so I actually have one of these, and I'm going to be doing a video on it, a full setup video, just like we did here. But I have a UX7, and we're going to go ahead and connect it to our Dream Router 7 wirelessly. So instead of using it as a gateway and using all the functionality that's built into it, we're actually just going to use it as an access point, a Wi-Fi 7 access point. And so it actually works really well for this. It's got a nice little form factor that you can set on the counter, and I really love this functionality. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Now, if I come over into my devices, an area we really haven't spent much time in, you're going to see Express 7 click to adopt. Now, it should be important to note here, all I've done is plug in the Express 7. That's all I've done. There's no pre-configuration. There's no nothing. And when these things come up, same thing with one of these access points. When they come up, they say, hey, I'm here. Who wants to adopt me, right? And typically when they're physically plugged in, that's what we would do. The router would see it and we would adopt it. However, as long as these devices have power and they're within reach of another device, they can actually be adopted wirelessly, okay? And so we're going to do that. So all I need to do here is to click on click to adopt. And it is going to use our Express 7 as an access point. Because everything is done in a controller type situation, we talked about this earlier, that Express 7 is going to learn about all our VLANs, it's going to learn about all our Wi-Fi networks, all our passwords, and it's going to start representing our network on inside the system, which is just awesome. I mean, it really is kind of cool. Now, one thing I will tell you about about mesh networking as it pertains to Ubiquiti. I'll be honest, I haven't always been a fan. I found that the speeds really weren't there, right? When you buy an Orbi system, for example, an Orbi mesh, I find that those systems are designed to be mesh, and you get, dedicated backhauls and all these things that make them much, much faster. And so when you translate that into the Ubiquiti world, I just found that the speeds weren't really there. No matter almost every case, if you were connecting to the wireless mesh device, you could almost count on just cutting your speed in half. However, I have noticed, and if you guys would like me to do a video on this, I'm happy to. I just want to make sure there's enough interest. But in my initial testing here, when I was connected to the Express 7 over the wireless mesh, I was pulling my full 400 to 450 megabits of internet speed, just like as if I was connected to the Dream Router 7. So I don't know if they've fixed it, if they've made it better, if it's a Wi-Fi 7 thing. I don't know what fixed it. But like I said, I'm happy to do a deeper dive test if it's something you guys want to see and just kind of put it to the test. I would have to set up a couple things. That's why I want to know. So while this thing is adopting and it's learning, you can see that its uplink here, it just says mesh. And then once it comes online and it goes all green, it'll show who it's connected to. We'll be able to look at signal strength and everything. The other thing I want to call your attention to is it's connecting to our default network, the one we talked about, the 192.168.1.1 network. This is our management network. And so this is the VLAN I want this to connect to, which is really, really cool. So we're going to give it a second while it connects here, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more. Okay, so I just refreshed my screen. You can see we are all green. It pulled an IP address of 192.168.1.113 on the default network. Its uplink, or the device it's talking to, is happening via mesh. You can see down here, this has GBE, or Gigabit Ethernet. So that means there's a physical connection talking to it. This is a wireless. Wireless is mesh. Its parent device, this is kind of a parent-child relationship, is the Dream Router 7, and it's talking on these couple channels here. And we're up and running. This thing knows about all of our VLANs. It knows about all of our Wi-Fi and everything. So I can come in here and let's just say I wanted to, make some changes here. First thing I want to call out here is our signal strength. I really like that they incorporated this signal meter in here. We are minus 45 dBm from the Dream Router 7. Which this is part of the game we play with mesh, right? Mesh, we want to make sure we're far enough away from our parent device that we're actually helping the Wi-Fi coverage, but yet we got to be close enough to it that we have good signal strength between them. Otherwise, you sacrifice some speed between the wireless mesh. And so minus 45 is really good. So these are just on the same level of my house across from each other, probably 50, 60 feet away, something like that. So they're not super far away from each other. Maybe not how I would do it, but for the sake of this video, that's how I have it set up. We could go into settings. We could change the name of this device. So maybe I want to call this Kitchen UX7, right? We can change our channel widths. I'm just going to leave everything as auto. We could, if we had multiple APs to uplink with, because APs can mesh with other APs, you could lock it into an AP. There's a lot of things you can do in here, but we don't really have to worry about it because there's really only one other device it can mesh to. So we'll go ahead and say apply changes. Now we've renamed this to Kitchen UX7, and we are good to go. All right, so now it is meshed. I've done some speed tests on it. I was getting really great results. Honestly, I was getting fantastic results with my speed test. So I've been very happy with this setup, and I think you guys would be as well if you had to expand your wireless coverage. If we went over into our little topology, this has changed now. So now we have, Dream Router 7 and then Kitchen UX7. And I'm going to connect my phone to it real quick just to kind of see which one I would connect to. So I'm going to go ahead and connect to, let's see, which one do we want to connect to? Let's connect to home Wi-Fi. All right, let's see which one my phone connects to. All right, so now we have a client in there, and it'll take a second to register, which is fine. I'll refresh my screen here. Sometimes it takes a second. Okay, there's iPhone. It's connected to the kitchen UX7. Okay, so it did connect to that. So if I go back into my little topology here, you can see, and I'm going to rotate this so it's top down. I got T-Mobile going into my Dream Router 7. You can see this is a solid line. So if I zoom in here, you can see this is a solid line. That means they're physically connected. And this is a dash line because it's wirelessly connected. So I have a wireless connection from my iPhone to the UX7 and a wireless connection to the Dream Router 7. So really, really cool. I'm going to do a couple speed tests on here. Let's see if we can generate some traffic. So go ahead and run a speed test here. All right. Not maxing it out, but pretty well. I mean, this is in the other room, but I'm pulling 350. All right, so pretty good. I mean, not too shabby. Just pulled 380. So I really usually typically cap out at 400, 420, sometimes 450, not very often. And then I can show internet traffic, and you can see when I didn't really have ability to show you this last time. Let me actually turn this to the side. You can see that it kind of gives you how wide the band is how much traffic that device is using. But that, guys, is how you could expand your internet coverage or your Wi-Fi coverage without having wires in the wall. So, pretty cool. So, there you go. Full setup of the Dream Router 7 from start to finish. I'll have all the chapters obviously broken out. Hopefully you can pick and choose kind of what you want to learn more about and you find this video helpful. Leave comments below. I love to, talk to my community here. You guys have always been really great. And so I hope this helps you guys out in some way. We're going to be doing more videos like this. Like I said, I plan on doing a full setup video of the UX7 and kind of talk about what it can do. So if any of this stuff excites you and you like the way I teach here, by all means, I invite you, please like or subscribe, and we'll see you guys down the road in a future video.